Brady, New Jersey, into your homes today, since we can't get together in person. I'm afraid I tested positive early last week for COVID, and I'm still feeling a little dragged out, but I didn't want to miss this opportunity to meet with all of you. I'm not sure if I'll be able to see everyone's faces during our presentation, but I have a feeling that I would recognize some of you from my hopping around the state for the past almost 22 years working on gun violence prevention. So I'm sure that many of you are already familiar with Brady, maybe even back from when it was first started in 1974 as Handgun Control Incorporated and Center to Prevent Handgun Violence. Even in the early 80s, Brady was already the oldest and most influential gun violence prevention organization in America. After changing to the Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence, it still consisted mainly of lobbying Congress on the Hill in Washington, D.C. Over the years, the logo was revised several times and various color combinations were used until March of 2019, when we were revitalized and renamed merely Brady. I'd like to show a little video that was produced at the time to honor Sarah and Jim Brady and explain the rebranding. Angelique.
President Reagan has indeed been shot.
Jim Brady was shot in the head when a gunman tried to kill President Reagan. But that didn't stop him. Together with his wife, Sarah, they fought for the first bill for background checks. They banged on every door in Congress, shook hands, not fists, found common ground and common sense, and got the Brady bill passed under President Clinton. For over 25 years, our fight has never stopped. We work across Congress, courts, and communities. We unite, not divide. Liberal and conservative, young and old, red and blue, and every shade of color to take action, not sides. We are all Brady. We are all united against gun violence.
Thank you. So until 2001, the Brady campaign worked on federal legislation through Congress and through the courts with their legal department, but still had no local component to work in the local communities through state legislation, community outreach and education, or to work with victims and survivors of gun violence. But that is when New Jersey and many other states got involved. You may recall that on Mother's Day of 2000, the Million Mile March took place. I feel that many of you may have been there, as the National Council of Jewish Women took a big part in organizing over 80 buses, a train car, and numerous individual vehicles filled with New Jerseyans to join with the estimated 850,000 people on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. that day. Some of you know Donna Dees Thomas personally, who at that time was a young New Jersey mother with two little girls who had met her frustration limit when she saw on TV one day in 1999 a classroom of kids in a Jewish synagogue in California being invaded by a gunman. In the coming days and months, with no social media to speak of, Donna brought together the Million Mile March just 9 months later. Million Mile March, or surely 850,000 men, women, and children on their doorsteps and at 77 other locations across the country, demanding of Congress sensible gun laws, save kids, would wake up, that they would wake up and pass safer gun laws. But as we all know, that one-day gathering did not do the trick. So over 400 county-based Million Mile March chapters were formed by September, and Bergen County was one of the first, along with the 8 others in New Jersey. In 2001, the Million Mile March merged with the Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence, becoming the grassroots activists that have continued their powerful work at state houses and community fests, partnering with law enforcement, religious leaders, medical and legal professionals, and other gun violence prevention advocates to make our households safer. There are too many campaigns being worked on by Brady for me to discuss them all today, but I encourage you to check out the Brady website at bradyunited.org. That's bradyunited.org to see that all that is going on the national level. Read how Brady Legal is working and winning through courts on behalf of victims and survivors. See our youth-based Team Enough in action and learn how you can help move gun violence prevention legislation through Congress. Before we get into Brady, New Jersey specifics, we are going to hear from two areas of concern throughout the entire country. First, I'd like to introduce Colleen Creighton, who will talk to you about our End Family Fire campaign.
Thank you so much. I'm going to try to share my screen. And let me see. All right, is that working? Can you see the slides?
No.
Let me see.
No, it's not coming up.
We'll share screen. There we go. And okay, that should be, is that working now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we'll get there. So this is our End Family Fire campaign. And what I love about this campaign as we get into it, it's a really unique set of just the way it's positioned. It's set in phases, which I'll go through, and it's overall already proving to save lives. So what is End Family Fire? One of the things that they did when we looked at this is what's the problem? Do a quick analysis and who's being impacted and what do we need to do? And they realized, I mean, look at these numbers. Every day, 8 children and teens are unintentionally injured or killed by family fire. That's 8 kids every single day. If you look at the national scale, it's 4.6 million children live in homes with an unlocked gun. 2/3 of all gun deaths are by suicide. And then nearly 90% of all suicide attempts with the firearms are fatal. And previous to this, I was actually the CEO of the American Association of Suicidology. And one thing I really, really loved about Brady is Brady was not afraid to tackle this problem. They came in and said, kids are being killed, people are taking their own lives with a gun. What do we need to do? And they addressed it head on, which is phenomenal. Not a lot of groups out there or any others are doing this. Now, you may have a question, what is family fire? And it's actually a term that Brady really did a lot of research that went into this. And this is a term that they came up with. And it's a shooting involving an improperly stored or misused gun found in the home. And it results in death or injury. It's unintentional shootings, suicides, and then a not yet launched component will be the intentional shootings, domestic violence, and other ways that a gun is used intentionally within the home. What does it do? Right now, one of the things we've done is we started off strong with a partnership with the Ad Council. And many of you, a show of hands, I know we have multiple screens here, but many people have heard of Ad Council. They do huge campaigns nationwide, well respected. They've agreed to partner with Brady. They're a strong partner of Brady. And what they're doing is they're using all different ends and all different elements to really push this out. It directly addresses the vast majority of gun deaths in America. And it actually brings gun owners into the conversation because it realized a lot of gun owners are impacted by this, either taking their own life or accidentally not properly storing the gun. And then, something tragic happens in their home. And so Brady has said, we need to reach out to you. Let's develop messaging together. What it doesn't do is demonize gun owners. It doesn't question the right to own a firearm. It doesn't politicize things in any way or create us versus them. It's basically saying, and I've seen this used a lot in the suicidology field, is that with drunk driving, the issue is everybody's impacted by this. We take the keys, you don't question that anymore. We kind of change public perception. We want to do the same with guns. I'm not gonna get into questions about whether you have the gun or not. I just want to say, if you have the gun in the house, here's ways to keep your family safe. Now, when did we launch? 8/18, and a lot of that was a lot of 8s based off the number of the 8 children that are impacted by this every year. It took 18 months to develop. And when I said earlier that Ad Council does their research, they took together stakeholders from all different elements across the country, government, nonprofit, national organizations, states, individuals. They pulled them all in together for a series of meetings and really said, what's the need? Where do we need to be on this? Let's test some messaging. So exhaustive research, qualitative, quantitative, all the issue experts, and then conversations with gun owners and their family without. And if this works, we have a quick link where there's a quick 30-second spot for a video to give you an idea of unintentional shootings via Brady. Ooh. Is that new? All right, well, as we can link, but
All right, pal. Get ready for the day, buddy.
You can hear it, but can't
Hey,
see
Dad.
it.
oh,
Hey, Dad. Do we have a gun?
What's up?
I
Do
can.
we have a gun?
Why do you ask that, kiddo?
Can I play with it?
No, absolutely not. It's not a toy. You know that.
Do I? I bet it looks like one.
Yeah, well, it's not. Anyway, I need it to protect you, your sister, and mom.
From what?
From bad guys, like on TV.
But what about the 8 kids who get shot every day by mistake? Their daddies probably thought they were safe too.
Where'd you hear that?
TV.
Yeah, well, maybe we don't believe everything we hear on TV.
Where do you keep it?
It's hidden.
I bet it's on the top shelf of the closet, under your sweatshirts. Is it loaded?
It's not. I keep the
In
bullets.
the boots with the red laces, and the chest beside the bed? I haven't found them yet, but I'm sure I can. You always told me to be curious. Remember when I found my Christmas gift? I'm a good climber, you know.
No, that's not what I meant. Look, I need to be ready if someone breaks in.
But what about when it's just me and Mom? You taught me to be brave. I could use a gun to protect her.
No, Justin, I promise. I'll teach you how to handle a gun when you're old enough.
And what if I don't make it to old enough? I could get bullied and decide it's too much for me. It would be so easy with our gun.
Our gun? No, buddy. My gun.
But it is our gun. In our home. Happens all the time.
I'll make sure that doesn't happen. I'm always here for you.
But Dad, you're not always here.
And we can share these in the chat, or you can find them on the End Family Fire YouTube page. But basically, with the launch, this is unintentional injuries within the home for children, and so it's a very hard-hitting, impactful ad called Justin. Where we move, so that was phase one. I said there's 3 phases. The first phase was unintentional injuries, so a lot of children and the numbers for that. On 9/20 in September in 2020, the next phase began, and this is suicide by firearm. Because as we said earlier, the majority of suicides across the country are by gun. We took about 12 months to develop this, both again, exhaustive research and both quantitative and qualitative. We had a full number of panels with experts. And then we worked with gun owners and their families. And because we realized in some of the rural areas and some of the parts of the country, having this discussion, they said the minute you talk gun hunting and not duck hunting or for deer hunting, they said there's a question. The minute you don't get the right verbiage right, the conversation shuts down. And so we brought everybody to the table for a series of panels and really walked through. Now there's another ad. Did that first ad, were you able to see that as well? Because I think there's a second, shorter, quick ad. One of the things with gun suicides, when they developed this ad, a little preface here, is that this is obviously a very sensitive issue. And they tested a number of different ways to portray this, but they realized so many ones were triggering in some format. And so they took a creative approach, and we'll see if we can get this one.
All right. I'm in the house.
Okay, what do you see?
Nothing yet. Hold on. I think I just heard something. I'm heading upstairs.
Okay, I'm almost there.
I'm in the bedroom.
Okay.
It's not here.
What?
The gun's not here.
What do you mean? Where is it?
Cameron, are you in there? Open the door. Come on. Cameron.
Again, a very, very impactful, hard-hitting, a different kind of creative way that they were able to get the message across. So on 10/21 this past year, one of the things that we realized with all of our research was that veterans were a very important portion of folks that needed to get this messaging. And so we worked and we did more research on how to reach this target audience, but we partnered with Facebook and their creative team, and we developed some ads with survivors. There's a gentleman who lost his brother to suicide. There's a number of veterans, and what they did is they each told their individual story, because what we realized is telling that personal story from a first person point of view reached most people and really got them to take the actions. We've also developed some additional ads, and I can talk, we're rolling things out in Missouri a little bit later this year. And we had issue experts and veterans throughout the entire time telling us, this works, this is not going to work, and here's why. And then there's a couple of creative that we developed by veteran-led teams on getting things to more, especially in time for Veterans Day. And I think this one is a little bit different. You can see.
I'm Tommy Anderson. I'm a 23-year veteran of the United States military.
My name is Teresa Barber. I was in the United States Navy and I served in the Middle East and Africa.
I'm Chris Jackamick. I served in the United States Air Force and I deployed 3 times.
My name is Charles Taway. I was in the United States Navy, flight deck, Harris Truman.
My name is Gary Parker. I served as a Cavalry Scout and a military policeman in the United States Army for 20 years.
My name is Siobhan DeBar. Aviation was my soul, and artillery became my heart.
Our motto in that role is my job is people, everyone is my business. But unfortunately in that year, I would lose my own brother, Lance Corporal Adam Jackamick, to suicide.
Early on in my career, I had a commander that taught our suicide prevention training on a Friday afternoon, and the very next day he took his own life.
I've had veteran friends die from gun suicide, and it leaves a hole in your heart that can never be filled. The majority of veteran suicides are from guns.
What didn't take place? What didn't happen that could have prevented that?
It's that added step to get to your firearm that might just give somebody a moment of reflection on what they're doing.
It's your guard that you put up beforehand to ensure that if you're not in the right state of mind, you're still watching your own back.
Anytime you're not storing a weapon safely, you're putting yourself and your community at risk.
I store my weapons securely, not only for myself, but for my family. Lock your guns up.
Protect yourself and those around you.
I'm a true believer that service never stops. Part of that for me is storing your guns safely, because you just never know.
My service never stops.
Service never stops.
Service never stops. My service never stops.
Help stop suicide.
So you can see, again, a totally different approach from the first person angle, but we're looking at really expanding that throughout the next year as well. Couple more slides, just partners that we've worked with, everything from the National PTA, the American Psychological Association, the Public Health Association, Gun Safety Alliance, Moms Men Action. And again, partners are very excited to participate with this because no one else is doing this. No one else is tackling this in such a forward way and really being a national voice on this topic. Are we making a difference? It's already proving yes. Some of the data that we have done, it shows that gun owners who have seen the advertising actually shifted their attitudes and behavior. So you can see a couple of data points here. 41% of gun owners who saw the ads sought out info on safe storage versus 10% of gun owners who didn't see the ads. 48% of gun owners who saw the ads expressed concern that a gun in the home increases the risk of a tragedy versus 20% of gun owners who did not see the ads. So clearly what we're doing here is working. The only thing we need is to get it out to more communities across the country. So the power of increasing End Family Fire campaign awareness, the whole thing is even just a little bit an increase. So more people seeing these ads lead to greater impact. A 1% increase in awareness will reach 512,000 people living with guns in their home. 5%, 2.5 million. And then it's about 16 cents per person to reach people who've seen the ads. What are we doing moving forward? Well, it's critical to build on the success of the campaign. Like I said, for two reasons, no one else is doing this. And so it's already proving effective. The number of people that have seen the ads, have interacted with the campaign, and then have changed their behavior is phenomenal. So our tool and our strategy right now is to grow and really get this out, number one, to more communities and get more people involved with End Family Fire. What does the next step look like? The National Suicide Prevention one, it's out there. We're looking at doing more. The next phase will be unintentional shootings of children, getting more ads, because we saw Justin, that resonated with many people across the country, but we need to get more of those ads produced. And then we also need to target PSAs to specific populations, to seniors, to domestic violence, people of color, LGBTQ, youth. And then I have a number of slides I can stop sharing now with a number of the ads that we've done since then. And the next phase of this, which will launch, looks like early next year. COVID kind of stopped things and paused them for a little bit. One of the things that we want to do is address intentional shootings, and that'll be phase 3. So that domestic violence, but it all comes down to one point. If you do have a gun in the home, safely store it. If you don't have a gun in the home, but if you have kids that are playing in houses, you should know who has a gun in the home and is it safely stored. And so that's kind of the comprehensive look at everything that Brady's doing with End Family Fire. And I can put it in the chat, but it's endfamilyfire.org. You can find out all the information. Right now, one of our biggest projects is in the state of Missouri, where we're working with Missouri Foundation for Health, 8 different local grantees across the ground, and Ad Council. And we're really starting in April, you'll see this push out. There'll be a separate landing page for Missouri specific. There'll be a series of ads that push out starting in April, billboards, a lot of things across the state. And then also stakeholder meetings. We're going to combine everybody together to talk about the issue. Missouri is specifically targeted with firearms and suicide, but we'd love to get more states engaged and how to, in communities across, kind of networking them around the issue. We have the research, we have the data that shows what's effective messaging and what works. And we just need help getting it out to more communities. So that's a little bit about End Family Fire, but looking forward to the rest of the conversation.
Well, thanks a lot, Colleen. I just was looking over some of the comments that were made and questions. Someone asked in regard to the veterans, are you working at all with the VA? Are you getting this information out to them?
We are. The veterans, they are one of our partners, and they have a lot of subgroups that they work with. So there's a lot of, some of the crisis lines, veterans crisis line, to make sure that they have this information and they're able to share it. But yeah, we're definitely working with them.
Good. And also, Joan had a question about children going into friends' homes, and she says, how do visiting child's parents deal with tackling the gun issue with the friend's parents? And I'll just say that I always look at End Family Fire as like an expansion on the Ask campaign that we started when we first had the Million Mile March. It was introduced then, and we've been using that ever since in our chapters, where we always encourage parents to ask if there's a gun in the home where they send their kids. And, you might think that that's an awkward conversation to get into. You just go up to somebody and say, hey, do you have a gun in your home? But, just being in this presentation today, if you're talking to someone, you could just say, I was seeing a presentation the other day on gun violence prevention, and it never entered my mind, but I was just wondering, do you have a gun in your home? So you can get the conversation rolling that way. It doesn't have to be a threatening conversation, but certainly if if you find that a person has a gun in their home and it's not stored properly, then, you know, maybe the kids should play at your house instead, instead of the
Yeah.
other.
And just, I couldn't agree more, but having the awkward conversation up front is a lot easier than having to deal with unintended consequences on the back end, right? So a little bit, so absolutely agree.
Yeah, Carol Price, who organized, you know, really came up with the Ask campaign because her 13-year-old son was shot. She was asked years and years ago when she, you know, got into this that, you know, they were saying, like, don't you find it awkward, you know, talking to people about this? And she said, no more awkward than finding a casket for my son. So, you know, like I say, you get a couple of things like that, and it keeps you going, and you don't worry about, you know, offending people by asking them. It's people's lives that are involved here. And I will say too that this End Family Fire, you know, we've touched on different things, and a lot was focused on children, like I say in the beginning, and things like that. And we're working through the different things. But with End Family Fire, you know, safe storage is just so important. That's why we're trying to get a bill through in New Jersey, and hopefully it'll get through in this next session, which we'll have. Actually, we have a CAP law now, which is child access prevention, and that does supposed to have people store their guns properly, which, you know, could mean on the top shelf underneath a you know, somebody's sweatshirt is, you know, what they, if they think that's the proper way of storage. So we're trying to strengthen that, and we want it not only if there's a child in the home, but that everyone should store their guns properly. And people could come in just on a home invasion and take your gun if it's just sitting out somewhere and use it on you, or steal it from your home and go out and use it in a crime and perhaps kill someone else. So like I say, it has a lot of different angles why this campaign is just so important. So I would like to thank you again. I'll try to look over the other questions, maybe while Anneliese is speaking, to see if there's anything more, and we can circle back even at the end if there are more questions for you, Colleen, okay?
Absolutely. And I can put I'm putting my email in the chat now in case anyone has a question I can answer too.
Thank you. Yeah, I see a couple more, so we'll try to get back to those. But right now, why don't we move along to Anneliese Dickman, who is going to talk about crime guns.
Thanks, Carol. Thanks so much, everybody. My name's Anneliese. I'm the City Program Manager for the Combating Crime Guns Initiative at Brady. And I'm based in Milwaukee, and I'm a member of the Milwaukee section of NCJW. So it's really nice to be here with all of you today. And it's really powerful that we're having this program on Holocaust Remembrance Day. As you know, the availability of firearms in America is making so many of these anti-Semitic, racist, nationalist movements so much more dangerous. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we can prevent guns from being diverted from the legal market to the illegal market where they're used in crime. So I'm going to share my screen now. All right, can everyone see this? Yes, okay. New Jersey, as most of you know, does pretty well compared to the rest of the country in terms of preventing gun injuries and gun deaths. Your gun death rate is the fourth lowest in the country, and it has been for a while. And we really credit your state laws with this, because the low rates that you have compared to the rest of the country are low for homicides, they're low for suicides, they're low for gun injuries. And that's tells us that there's something systemic about New Jersey that helps prevent gun violence. And researchers have looked at the impact of your strong gun control laws and attribute these low death rates and low injury rates to your strong laws. But of course, even just one gun death or one gun injury is not acceptable. And so there's more to be done. And if we look just at the guns used in crime, while you've had a declining gun homicide rate for 10 years leading up to the pandemic, you had increases in gun homicides in both 2020 and 2021. And this uptick, you know, is rare for New Jersey because you'd been declining despite increases across the rest of the country. But it is a little concerning that it's upticked. Keep in mind, however, that still with this uptick, you're at historically low rates of gun homicide in New Jersey. So it is something to be worried about. It's something to work on, but overall, what you've got in place seems to be working fairly well. So what is a crime gun? These guns that have been used in homicides, but that's not the only type of crime gun. A crime gun is any gun that's been recovered by law enforcement. Maybe it's been used in a crime, maybe it was found at a crime scene, maybe the possession of that gun was itself a crime because the person who had it was not legally allowed to own a gun. Or maybe it was a gun found at the time that they arrested the person and wasn't really related to that arrest, but still law enforcement will seize firearms of that type. And those are what are called crime guns, and that is what we're concerned about. So if I can get this video to work, I think I'm going to try a different tactic though. I think I might, let's see.
Did you know that 90% of crime?
Give me a thumbs up if you can see the video. Can anyone see the video? It's not playing right now. I have it paused.
No, we just heard the sound, I think.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to stop screen sharing and then I'm going to try again. Okay. And okay, I'm sorry about this. Now I'm going to start again. And now.
Guns are sold
Thumbs
by
up, can you see
5%
it?
of gun dealers. A tough problem with a simple
Got it.
solution, right? Go to those dealers and get them to follow the laws or put them out of business. Unfortunately, we're missing a piece of the puzzle. We don't know who they are. What is a crime gun? A crime gun is a gun recovered by law enforcement that may have been used in a crime, or the possession of the gun itself may have been a crime. What do crime gun suppliers have in common? They allow straw purchases where one person is buying the gun for another person's use, often to avoid a background check. They assist gun trafficking by selling guns for illegal resale without a license. And they illegally provide guns without a paper trail, skipping federally required Brady background checks. In high crime areas, the problem gun dealers are typically outside the city limits. They make a profit from violence and crimes in cities they don't even live or work in. Gun violence might seem inevitable, but actually in a year, 86% of gun dealers sell no crime guns at all. Crime guns radiate out from problem dealers like pollution that can be traced back to its source. When a gun is used in a crime, the police collect it as evidence, and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, the ATF, traces it to which firearm dealer sold the gun. Every year, the ATF traces nearly 500,000 crime guns. That data is collected and stored. But then there's an information blackout. That data is kept secret from the public. This information used to be public. City officials, researchers, and community organizers used that data to discover crime gun dealers, ensuring they reformed any irresponsible practices or were shut down. That kind of action is much harder, if not impossible today, because of the 2003 TR Amendment. The ATF interprets the TR Amendment to block crime gun data from anyone other than a law enforcement agency or prosecutor in connection with a criminal investigation. That's why the public no longer has access to crime gun trace data. These crime gun dealers may be in your town, county, or state, but you'd have no way of knowing. The irresponsible gun dealer is protected from public scrutiny and from the consequences of their actions. In 2018, the ATF inspected only 7.6% of licensed gun businesses, and there's no evidence these inspections included the dealers who sold the majority of crime guns. Let's use our limited resources intelligently and focus on the 5% of gun dealers profiting off the gun violence in our communities. Stopping the flow of crime guns at the source is a supply-side solution to gun violence. It's time to make that information public and put it to good use. We need to demand this data It's being held hostage, and so is our ability to fight gun crime. Contact your elected officials to demand crime gun data be made public.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and go back to my slides. Okay, so our Combating Crime Guns initiative is trying to solve that problem that the video just explained using supply side solutions. And we have 3 pillars that we work under. We educate, we identify, and we reform. Education is what we're doing today, talking to people, telling them what crime guns are, telling them that the problem is that the supply chain is profiting from guns being used in crime, that they are not incentivized to prevent their firearms from being diverted out of the legal supply chain and into the criminal market. So the ATF isn't doing what they need to be doing to prevent that. And in many states, the states aren't doing it either. And then we identify the irresponsible dealers and manufacturers. And I'll share in the chat when I'm done the website, but we have a brand new database that we unveiled last week that includes tens of thousands of ATF inspection reports for several years. So we sued ATF under Freedom of Information Act to get their reports that they fill out when they go in and inspect a gun dealer. So it has all the violations of that gun dealer of federal law. And we got all these PDFs, created a database, and made an interactive map that's now online. It's called the gunstoretransparency.org. And you can go in and search by zip code, by state. You can see what dealers are around you that have violations, what kind of violations they are. And this really is the first sharing of this information publicly ever. These were not, even though these were public records, ATF did not share them publicly until we sued to get them. So I'll make sure that website's in the chat. So with that information, you can identify which dealers around you have egregious violations, like missing firearms or selling firearms without a background check, or failing to report to law enforcement when someone comes in and buys multiple guns at a time. And then the third pillar is to reform the supply chain. So we do that by working with Congress or state legislatures to enact legislation to hold the gun industry accountable. Our legal team often sues gun dealers and gun manufacturers. And then we work with communities to take local action where you can get your local government to better regulate firearms right in your area. And we call this a supply side approach, and it's meant to complement most gun violence prevention work, which is what we call a demand side approach. So most prevention work is about making sure that the shooter doesn't hurt anyone with the gun. So that's often like in family fire. That is very important work, and we are trying to complement that work with the supply side approach that is aimed at changing the behavior of actors in the supply chain. And I usually compare this to the opioid epidemic. So it's been obvious since the start of the opioid epidemic that not only do we need to worry about the users and changing their behavior, but we also need to worry about the people who are prescribing opioids. So that correlates to the gun dealers who are selling the guns, and the pharmaceutical companies who are marketing these dangerous drugs. And that correlates to the gun manufacturers who are marketing dangerous products. So it's a public health informed approach trying to get behavior change by the gun industry. In New Jersey, you do a very good job at a website called New Jersey Gun Stat of putting your trace data out there monthly. So you can look up every month how many crime guns have been recovered across the state of New Jersey, who's manufactured them, and where they came from. Most of your crime guns, as someone mentioned in the chat, come from out of state. So this is a cross-jurisdictional issue for New Jersey most of the time. But there are significant numbers of guns that come from dealers in New Jersey. And so these are 2020 numbers. There were 350 crime guns recovered that came from dealers in New Jersey last year. But I want to give you all a lot of credit. It's work of Carol and all her advocacy friends who've gotten some really strong gun laws passed in New Jersey. And New Jersey is really leading the state in terms of the supply side actions. So you have this great base of gun laws, like a permit to purchase law, that really does a lot to prevent straw purchases because you have to show your state permit at the time you purchase a firearm. You have a gun dealer licensing law that allows the state to inspect gun dealers, so you're not just relying on ATF. And you've also passed a ghost gun ban, and ghost guns are the guns that you can buy a kit of all the different parts, and then you go home and you assemble them and you have a working firearm, and you don't have to pass a federal background check in order to buy the kit. So New Jersey has banned those ghost guns. Your governor, Phil Murphy, has also taken a lot of executive actions that are really leading the nation. So your Department of Justice created a statewide crime gun data intelligence network. So trace data of crime guns is shared with all law enforcement agencies across the state. And then you have this public facing website that has a lot of gun trace data on it as well. And then you've entered a 4-state compact with New York and Pennsylvania and Connecticut, and the federal government is involved as well to share trace data across all states so that you can go after some of those cross-jurisdictional gun trafficking rings. And all that is very forward thinking and is not what's happening in the rest of the country. And then there's 2 things you're doing that Brady's been involved in. And one of those is changing your procurement rules. So Governor Murphy issued an executive order that requires all vendors who want to do business with the state to show that they have a policy that prevents them from contributing to the crime gun problem. So for instance, any financial institution that wants to do business with the state has to show the state that they have a policy where they are not contributing to the crime gun problem. So maybe they don't allow firearm dealers to be clients of theirs. Maybe they, if this were like a credit card servicing company, maybe they don't have any gun dealer clients. And we surveyed these vendors and found that because of this executive order in New Jersey, many of these big national corporations developed policies as a result of New Jersey's executive action. So before, they hadn't really thought about how they might be contributing to the problem, but because of Governor Murphy's action, they had to go through, look at who they also do business with and develop these policies. Maybe their policy is, you have to prove to us that you don't have crime guns traced back to you before we will do business with you. They have a wide range of policies, but it did force them to think through this so that they could continue to do business with New Jersey. And then finally, your New Jersey State Police has the obligation under state law to inspect gun dealers in New Jersey. And we are working with them by providing them with a predictive algorithm that will help, and we've piloted this with them, and it's really been helpful so far, and hopefully it'll go full-fledged soon. It helps them deploy their resources more efficiently and effectively. So the algorithm helps them prioritize the dealers that are at the highest risk of contributing to the gun crime problem. So the data that went into that was all those inspection reports I was talking about, all the trace data of how many guns that have been traced back to them. And then other things we found that were relevant were things like, if the gun dealer is in Newark, say, but the owner of the gun shop lives 40 miles out of town, that is a much more high risk gun dealer than one where the owner lives in the same town as the shop. If the shop is located real close to an interstate, that's more high risk. So all those variables go into this algorithm, and then it helps the state police prioritize how they're going to spend their time and where they're going to send their troopers to do the inspections and focus on the high risk dealers and give them the most attention. And then we have local actions you can take. We have a report that I'll make sure you get a link to that is aimed at creating a menu of actions that local elected officials in your own town or your county can take. Most towns have nuisance laws, for example, and if one dealer is contributing a lot of crime guns to the crime problem in your city, a nuisance law might be a way that you can go after that dealer. You can apply the public nuisance law to the dealer. So just if it were someone that were causing pollution or loud noise or, you know, serving alcohol too late and people were leaving the business and getting in traffic accidents, those are all cases where states have, or cities have regulated under public nuisance law. You can do the same thing to a gun dealer as well. So if anyone's interested in learning more about that, this is my email address. I'm happy to answer questions, and we're happy to get you connected with Carol and her group so that you can join in for the local advocacy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anneliese. That was really good. I was glad that you could bring in as much as you could about the New Jersey information, you know, rather than just on the national level. I remember when we were invited to the governor's press conference where he announced the gun stat, New Jersey gun stat. I went up to the superintendent of police, state police, and asked him, you know, you now are tracing back and you can see that, oh, these guns are not being, you know, manufactured here or whatever, or sold here. They're coming in from other states. I said, if you know the state, you certainly know what town they're coming from. I said, are you eventually going to go after the dealers? And he said, well, that's a good thought. So now seeing that, you know, Brady has brought out this thing where they're getting the information from the ATF and publicizing it, you know, we're hoping that that can, you know, now be, you know, started to happen, that they can actually go after the actual dealers. And our job here as chapters in New Jersey and other places, chapters of the Brady campaign, our job in receiving this information was to get it out to the ATF information, was to get it out to as many people in leadership as we could, so that they would be aware of the resource and of the importance of the gun store inspections as a means to address the gun traffic and gun violence. So I just want you to know that I've spoken to the chief of staff of Governor Murphy, and they are already reaching out to the Democratic Governors Association to promote the use of this tool. So hopefully they'll be doing a little push, because I think, you know, New Jersey, Governor Murphy is really well respected in the in any of the communities that are looking at gun violence prevention. So thank you. Well, like I say, we'll have to look. I don't know whether anyone else has any questions they want to bring up right now, or if we go through the list, like I said, we might see some other things in here. But
yeah, there was a good question at the beginning about how do we stop guns coming from states from the South, because there is, I mean, Pennsylvania is your biggest contributor, but then you've got Virginia, North Carolina, Georgia, South Carolina. So we are working at the federal level to try to make sure gun trace data is made publicly available again. And that takes Congress to act. But you can advocate to your governor, to your state legislators, to expand that compact that they have with New York, Pennsylvania, and Connecticut to include some of these southern states so that they can share that data before Congress takes action, and hone in on the dealers in those southern states that are responsible for those sales. Some of these dealers across the country are selling literally thousands of guns a year that are recovered in crime. And it's really shocking because most dealers will sell 0 guns used in crime. You know, your hunting supply store is not the source. These are dealers that know they can make a lot of money by selling to anyone who walks in off the street, and that's what they do, and those guns are used in crime.
Yeah, and I guess someone was saying, well, why aren't these stores closed? You know, a lot of them, like you say, they're not even inspected, and when they are, you'll see if you look at some of these records that there are a lot of redactions in the information that has come out. So it might say that in New Jersey there are 8 dealers that they have listed so far, and if you go into that, you might see that one of them has 4 complaints, I'll say, against them, or I forget what it's called, but it doesn't show you. It might say that they went in and like so many guns were missing from the store, but it will not tell you how many guns were missing. So Brady, I know, is trying to get that information so it is not redacted, and so we get all the information. So that might help if we can go in and really get a one-on-one with who's letting the guns out the door that shouldn't be.
Right,
and
and that speaks to one of the other questions. Nikki says, how do we reach all the psychologically ill people who get illegal guns? So this is how they get them, right? At some point, the gun is diverted to the illegal market. So a straw purchaser buys it and for someone else who then uses it to commit a crime, or a gun trafficker buys 6 guns at a time, brings them up to New Jersey and sells them on the street. So we're trying to work upstream as far as we can to stem that flow of diverted guns. And we do that by trying to hone in on those dealers that are really, just turning a blind eye to who their customers are and making those sales.
I do want to point out too, though, that when we're talking about psychologically ill people getting their hands on guns, I think statistics show that only a very minor % of gun crimes are done by psychologically ill people. We sort of think of everybody, they must be if they're shooting somebody, but they have to technically be or legally be psychologically ill is what they're talking about here. And I think that mentally ill people like that are more so on the victim end of a crime like that rather than on the other end of the gun, so to speak. And I did want to mention too that one of the bills that didn't get through this time that we're hoping to get through is holding the gun industry accountable, where the AG would be able to hold the gun industry accountable in the state here. And I read over the bill, and to me, I'm not any legal expert, but it seems so wide open that he could just do anything to anybody. So I'm really interested to see just how this goes. Okay, well, I guess maybe we'll move on from there, and we can come back if anybody notices any other questions along the way for either of the ladies here. Maybe we can come back and catch them at the end. Okay. Alrighty, thank you. Okay, so now I'd like to talk a little bit about what we do right here in Brady, New Jersey. And I will say that before the pandemic, community outreach was one of my favorite activities. We'd set up information tables at community fests, church and synagogue family days, events for Crime Victims' Rights Week or National Gun Violence Survivors Week. We'd set up an activity and have kids shoot hoops, not guns, or put their paint-soaked prints on our Hands Without Guns banners, or invite young and old to decorate T-shirts with gun violence prevention messages, all the time talking to them about ways that they can protect themselves from gun violence. Now we are doing things virtually, and although we don't get that close-up hands-on feeling, we still need to get these messages out to the public. We try to communicate via virtual events whenever possible, such as we are doing today, or through emails, our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Brady, New Jersey, and our work in progress website, which is nj.bradyunited.org. But we have remained busy throughout on the legislative front. Things have changed dramatically under Governor Murphy. In 2018, he introduced and signed into law 6 bills in his 1.0 gun safety package. And in 2019, his 2.0 package included 4 bills that were signed into law. And on April the 15th of 2021, the governor introduced his package, his 3.0 package, which included 9 gun violence prevention bills, plus several other gun violence prevention measures. Now, although only this past session, only 1 bill was eventually signed into law, and that was the regulating of school shooting drills, the governor publicly committed this past Monday to getting the others through early this year and signing them into law. Brady, New Jersey is again helping along with other advocacy groups, such as the National Council of Jewish Women Essex County section, to move these bills through the legislature. And we hope that after today, the Bergen County section might join with us as well. Now, if we have time at the end, I don't even know what time it is, but we can go over the bills that did not get through and discuss those. But right at this moment, I just wanted to invite you all to join Brady, New Jersey through the Bergen chapter, or if you're not in Bergen County, you can join at the state level if you're not in an area where we have a local chapter. And to that end, I'd like to introduce Leandra Perez, the lead of our Brady Bergen County chapter. And if we could bring her forward on the screen, there she is. She's also a member of our state executive committee, plus a contributor on a working group on safe storage of firearms. And she can be reached at lpires@bradyunited.org. Leandra, would you care to say a few words?
Thank you, Carol, and thank you everyone for this informative session today. As Carol stated, I am Leandra Perez, president of the Brady Bergen County chapter, as well as a member of the Brady NJ State Executive Committee. Currently, the Bergen Brady team is working on an event on gun safety. We're going to have an in-person event in June. More to come on that. The event will be including safe storage of firearms and the extreme risk protection order. And if you would like to get involved with gun violence prevention to help alleviate the very serious problem of gun violence in our society, you can contact me at lperez@bradyunited.org. I believe it's in the chat, but if not, I'll put it in there. And that's it. So thank you very much.
Okay, and the event that Leandra mentioned, I believe is going to be on June the 12th, starting at 4 o'clock. And it's
Yes.
Where again? It's going to be in person, hopefully. And
Yes.
where is it going to be?
Central Unitarian Church in Paramus, New Jersey.
Okay, so maybe try to get in touch with Leandra beforehand so that she can get you on her email list. And like I say, we'll be posting that on our Facebook page as well. But you know, you can get in touch with her and get on board so that you know all that's going on, and maybe you can give a hand also. So I'd like to thank you again, everyone, for inviting us into your homes, and we'd be happy to take any questions or catch up or go over the bills that are still floating around and waiting to get passed. So that's the end of our presentation, I believe.
Carol, it's Paula Schwartz. Thank you.